So yeah, let's start. Yeah, I have a confession to make. I actually accepted to talk at ScotlandJS just to make Lewis stop for 20 minutes. You're welcome. Oh, there's some Lewis fans in the audience.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, as I've been introduced by the wonderful Jason Lewis, I'm Robin from Berlin, and I'm the left one on the picture. It's kind of hard to recognize me because I shaved since then. But yeah, I'm army now on the internet if you want to make my pocket vibrate. As Lewis already said, I run the Berlin JS user group and Berlin JavaScript user group. I also used to run Reject.js, which was a community JavaScript conference that I used to run with friends. The last one was last year, so that's done. I also a big fan of classic cocktails, and in fact, I actually run a business that delivers cocktails to your place in Germany. And I think that love to cocktails kind of might explain why I'm also a co-founder of Nodecopter, which is JavaScript-driven flying robots. And if you're not scared by that yet, then you haven't seen them. So I'm really in the best position to talk about surviving JavaScript. Unfortunately, this is not about surviving the upcoming JavaScript-driven robot revolution. But don't worry, undefined is still not a function. So I will talk about how you can survive in this fast-paced world as a JavaScript, where basically everything changes within like 3 months, and you're feeling like always running behind. And because you just learned this one thing, and then there's like this new framework in town and everyone switched to it. So let's look into what creates this pressure and how we as a community deal with it. JavaScript is everywhere. We just saw talk about Electron and JavaScript on the desktop, but it's also in robots, as I said. No matter if this is a good idea or not. It's in the backend, it's in the front end, it's basically everywhere. And because of that, there's like new stuff coming out every damn time. This is great because it actually shows like a lively ecosystem and something that you can actually bet on JavaScript like for a really long time. But it also creates the problem of keeping up its speed. So many people feel that it's super easy to get out of touch with this whole trends, and that's why we gather at conferences. And that's right. I mean, it's super hard to do that. It's just too much. And there's also, as I said, like all the talks, then there's blog posts and everything, Twitter, conferences, meetups. So, and everyone talks about it. And the problem with that is people have opinions. And they're actually quite vocal. They're actually quite vocal about them. And there's also nothing really wrong with that, because you learn a lot, and you learn a lot from all these different experiences, which I think is a pretty unique experience in JavaScript, because you don't have that too much in other languages. And I really love that, but it's also like giving you the pressure of like keeping up, and you basically are to read lists like grow every day, and there's a whole business around read later services. So with this whole buzz around topics, there's also a lot of expectations into play. I mean, I remember like recruiters asking for 5 years plus experience in Node.js right after the project was announced, which was kind of weird. And while this is an extreme example, there's like many expectations around you having to know everything. You have to be on the top of things all the time. You have to invest every single bit of time into staying in touch. And honing your skills, and then plus you should have a side project that you do after your daily work. Making mistakes is nothing that is expected. You don't do mistakes, and it's expected of you to be super productive. And if you aren't, just get a standing desk and read those 10 articles about being more productive. Because like being tired is totally not a sign of too much work. And while I love this community events, this is ultimately the reason why I'm here. There's also a dark side of the community, which is we all add to this whole pressure. And I mean, have you ever been stuck somewhere and like managed to have the courage to ask someone at Stack Overflow, Twitter, or something like that, only to be replied with, read the fucking menu? And this is like extremely bad. Because many people actually spend some time to find a solution to work with your project, and they just couldn't find it for whatever reasons. And I'm not talking about some privileged asshole asking you to like implement their feature within 2 weeks of your free time in their open source project. It's not like that, but it's actually legitimate users who want to use your project. So yelling, read the fucking menus actually ignores the underlying problem of writing the fucking menu. Documentation is very important, but unfortunately often deemed as like a neglected task of non-meaningful work, as if code is everything that matters. There's many ways of improving this whole welcomeness of projects, and I won't go too much into detail of that, because there was already talks by Charlotte and Lewis, and Charlotte talked at ScotlandJS, and Lewis talked at ScotlandJS the day before, and so if you're interested, go watch their talks. It's really fucking amazing. They're amazing people, and I can make them wiggle. What I find interesting, though, is that there's a common reaction to these talks, which is, hey, let's convert everything to arrow functions by installing like a build chain and change everything but inclusive language, like replacing the word guys with something that is more like inclusive, like folks. Well, we can't do that, which is kind of strange. Anyway, so as I quickly mentioned earlier, there is this notion of real programmers. You're not a real programmer if you don't write code all day. Have you copy-pasted code from Stack Overflow? Too bad. Please leave your real programmer badge at the exit. This shit has to stop. Contributing to a project is so much more than just writing code. It's writing docs, it's giving support on social media, it's giving talks. I'm actually contributing right now. Writing blog posts, giving talks, design, mentor, a bunch of more. There's really so much. And actually, I would be dumb if I wouldn't use Stack Overflow if they have a solution for my problem, if that just worked. It would be actually a waste of my resources, and as a programmer, I shouldn't waste resources. Actually, as a human, I shouldn't waste resources. So now there's certainly something into building your own solution for a problem, and it can be super useful, but you don't have the time all the time. And I think the true power of programming is actually that we can create something out of so little with so many different skill levels, and that's great. Another pet peeve of mine are Thinkpieces. Or medium.com. They're often disguised as like thoughtful articles, which is most often are not just a huge rant against something that a person doesn't like, and then only to be followed with like a total uncritical hype of something that they really like. Because it's a think piece. It doesn't need like any nuances or any facts. It's just like, never let the truth come in the way of a good story. So my personal tip for reading blog posts is, if the title contains considered harmful, just close that tab immediately. It's helpful. As I said, these articles often draw one-sided arguments to make a point without actually looking into the problem. And they're often incredibly dogmatic. Last year, I gave a talk at Full Frontal, which is, by the way, an amazing conference. You should go this year. And it was about ES 2015. And while preparing that, I read a bunch of articles all over the place. And I was like one person who actually wrote he has seen startups going down because the devs use JavaScript classes. What the fuck? Anyway, so people take this thing way too serious. Like they actually overestimate the impact that code has, while they totally underestimate the impact of their post that they have to many people, especially beginners, because they take the words for granted and as holy. So code is not a religion. Programming is about making decisions. Those decisions often happen in a limited context. Be it that you didn't know all the context right now, or the business requirement changed, or there's new business requirements, or you simply learned a new few tricks. And the thing is, code is changeable. It's not set in stone. You just open up your editor, and you can change it. Sure, I mean, some code might be harder to change because all of the dependencies, but that might improve with your experiences. But if you're just blindly following those dogmatic blog posts, you never will get those experiences. And the other thing is, when people bash on other things, they're automatically closing the door for contributions from that side. And that's also super not cool, sorry, for people who are digging into a new thing, because they might stumble and they miss out on cool tool technologies. So dogmatic blog posts don't help anyone. Dan Abramov, creator of Redux, actually made that point a few days ago, and I couldn't agree more. He said, every time you diss a competing library, the invisible cost is all future collaboration that doesn't happen. And if you've seen like Angular 2, Redux, Ember going on, actually collaborating and like learning and sharing the experience, this is what I want to see. And to quote my favorite band, if you were if you really hate a framework for some reason, then use your anger as a gift. Who recognized that? Rage Against the Machine, by the way. If you're really upset with a framework, you can use that energy to actually work on making it better. Or you maybe write an alternative, because there's multiple ways to do stuff. This is programming. We can make our own reality if we want to sometimes. So, but letting that anger out on other people, on others' work, like that doesn't help. So while I'm German, sorry, I have to say that word. By the way, I'm not a big fan of this whole hero culture thing, because it has its own problem. But from those people who have risen to fame, I would say that Dan is like one really good role model, because he's very open about his thought process. He says who has inspired him, and he actually talks very open about bad decisions he made and stuff like that. This is really, really good. That's what I want to see. So the other problem that we have as a JavaScript community is actually JavaScript, the language that we're using. But actually, it's not the language that is a problem, but the people reacting to it. Robin Ward, who shares an excellent first name, just recently tweeted this. You can write really good JavaScript code that runs everywhere, but people will still hate you and your code, just for doing JavaScript. And to be clear, there's also Laurie, who's another excellent human being. NPM crowd loss. It's like JavaScript is terrible, and it really is sometimes. But other languages have also problems. I've recently came back to a Ruby project after having it not touched for like 4 months. And guess what happened? Bundle install failed. And this is not to shed any bad light on Ruby and Bundle. They are both awesome. It's just these things are hard to get right. And problems can be found in any language and every ecosystem. So I mentioned snark already, and seriously, JavaScript has jumped to snark. Communication is often vile, makes fun of other people, and contains a lot of it. So be it in blog posts, comments, pull requests, or anywhere, snark doesn't help anyone. NPM install fails? Yeah, sure, go on Twitter and write a snarky tweet. Doesn't help anyone. It will only lead to the fine peeps of NPM burning out and lose energy, and we have lost so many great minds to burnout due to toxic behavior. So if you ever feel the need to snark, stand up from your computer, get a coffee, pet your cat or dog or whatever you have, or yourself. Go outside, something, do whatever calms you down. Maybe just scream at something, and then come back and find a constructive way to report it, which will help to actually improve the project for everyone who is using it. I love the community, and I actually want to have more great people in it. And toxic behavior excludes those people from the get-go. And there's also this new sport in the JS community. This is a certain kind of joke. That is, whenever you joke about left pad, Dave Grohl kills a sloth. And I love sloths, and you will learn why. So the whole situation with that module wasn't easy for anyone involved. And NPM did their best to handle the situation. And I noticed one weird thing about this whole thing. There was a sudden influx of opinions from people who actually never used JavaScript. But apparently they became experts in something. And which is just stupid. I mean, haters gonna hate, of course, and I'm not saying that NPM is not without problems, and we have to have some discussions about the whole small module approach and NPM itself. But those are discussions to bring us forward. It's not snark or something. It doesn't help to just yell at these people and do dumb things. And dooming the whole ecosystem that actually works quite well for millions of people, that's just plain stupid. So remember, behind every project, there's people. Behind every commit, issue, PR, there's a person with a problem. It takes more than expertise. It takes empathy. So think about it. Behind every project, there's humans. Or in the case of NPM, there are wombats. And they deserve to be treated well. So what are some survival tactics to deal with all that stress? And as I said previously, Lewis and Charlotte already talked about it a bit, and I try to not repeat it, even though it bears repeating, but I try to have another angle to it. So let's start with a simple one: don't have opinions. I remember this one time working with a team of around 20 devs, and many projects have mostly been JavaScript based. And one day someone looked at the project and saw oh, this is all different code styles. We should have a code style guide. Well, guess what happened? Everyone had an opinion. And we barely made it through the var statements until we found our arc enemy. I love the semicolon. So we had a few old schoolers opting for the classic semicolon after every line, but then the Australian team members came and casted their vote and said, we want to have something that feels more home. And so then the new kids came along and said, well, we don't even need semicolons because there's automatic semicolon insertion. Just leave them off. And we already had 3 valid opinions and a discussion around that, and we didn't even make it to tabs with the spaces yet. So to be honest, this is nothing that takes any project forward. So we just decided on ScotlandJS, which is in fact just an opinionated style guide with a proper toolset that means convert existing code bases. I don't like some of its decision, but I don't have an opinion anymore. So the lesson for me has been, let robots have opinions. Whenever you can afford to not have an opinion, don't have one. We just integrated it into our CI setup and lived happily ever after. Standard has an opinion for us, so we don't need it. And as a programmer, this totally makes sense. We automate tedious tasks away, and maintaining a certain order of characters in your editor is a tedious task. So the side effect of this is that it actually makes it easier for newcomers to get into the project as well, because there's a well-defined rule set and automated tools in place to check for them. And you don't even have to read the rules, you can just start. Everything is there. While I have ScotlandJS on the slides, you can obviously also use tools like JSLint, ESLint, StyleLint, or whatever. Just make it sure that it's automated. And there's also tools like semantic release that has been mentioned by Lewis the other day, which helps you to reduce the mental burden of releases, and also has a nice side effect of actually having change logs. Greenkeeper that helps you to keep all the dependencies up to date. Like, the idea is whenever you can automate something, do it. Move fast and break things, which is, I would say, not a really good mantra to live by. There's certainly some tools on there because sometimes you have to, go forward and break things and try something out. But in your daily life, let me introduce you to my spirit animal, the sloth. Isn't it wonderful? I mean, it's the best animal ever, even better than cats, and I said it as a cat owner. A sloth is full of wisdom. Nap all day, sleep all night, party never. Perfect. So seriously, get enough time away from the computer. Oh, you want to take this camera's going up? Okay. Also, this is like, this beer is repeating. This is really amazing. Cool. Thank you, Katie. So yeah, as I said, like, get enough time away from the computer because burnout is real. I've seen many people suffering from it, and myself, I'm right in the middle of something like this. I actually want to sleep for 4 weeks. Just lay there, sleep, and not like participating in life. That would be quite amazing, actually. So it's real. Take your time off. Work is not that important. And sometimes it might mean you will miss out on some cool stuff that might not be a bad thing. I mean, do you remember io.js? I love io.js for what it did for Node. It's great, and we are definitely in a way better place than we have been before. But I saw countless hours spent into supporting that in your CI setups and your local setups and everything. And when all of that happened, the team that I've worked on at that time, we had to look at it and say, yeah, that's super nice, has some nice JavaScript features and some other stuff, and it's faster, but we don't want to open that barrier as well. We just used Node 0.10, which was pretty old by that standards, because we had way more important things to cover. So giving things some time to actually settle and stabilize themselves gives you some free mental capacity to just do something very more important. And later on, when things has been established and stabilized, you can just use them later on. So pick your battles. It's super easy to get lost in all the possibilities that we have, and it's great that we have all these possibilities. But sometimes we just add things to a project, and it just costs a lot without giving us much. And as I said before, we have been very, very conservative with our choices back then because we had enough non-technical issues. We picked Angular, which I personally really don't like, and some good old PhoneGap, Cordova, whatever the new name is, and CSS on top, and some amount of pouch and couch. It sometimes really hurt working with that stack, but in the end, sorry, we fucking saved lives. And we helped fight Ebola in Africa and improve the health system in some African countries. So, I mean, that's a win in my book. And I would never start a project with Angular ever again, but I can't hide the fact that it helped us, shipping all of the stuff. And this is also not about Angular, it just rubs me in the wrong way, doesn't say anything about Angular itself. So, and as I said, we had enough challenges because tech in Africa is interesting. So, there's a new framework coming out every day, probably right at this very minute, and keeping up with that is super impossible. So there's one tip that actually helped me learning frameworks without learning them, which is learn techniques, not APIs. JavaScript is fast-paced, but many lessons that you learn apply no matter the framework. For example, functional and immutability seem to be the new black these days, and lessons learned from that can be applied to your non-functional work as well. Obviously, you won't get the full thing within Angular, for example, but it still can help to improve your own code. And once you know a few of these techniques, it's easier to pick up on new libraries and frameworks. Note, I'm not saying easier, I'm saying easier. Because those are lessons we constantly learn. We always junior devs, which is another thing that Dan Abramov said. And it's totally okay to not know everything. It really is. So let me tell you a story of a team that I've worked on, which was the best team I've ever seen. It's a team that was so good that people who have been part of this team or just witnessed it still rave about it, even though it doesn't exist anymore due to some really bad mismanagement. And it took me a while to understand why this team was so great. It was because there were no know-it-alls. The management actually encouraged us to be humans, to make mistakes, and to talk about them. And it was clear in the field that we were working in. It came with so many challenges that it was totally clear we have to have mistakes. And this actually didn't lead to like sloppy programming or like I don't care because mistakes are allowed. It actually led to more collaboration within the team. Because not knowing something was something that you shouldn't be ashamed of. It was something that you could be open about and you could talk to your team members, and it led to people communicating way more and transferring knowledge along the way. And it was a really excellent experience. You can't know everything. Things are way too complex these days, and it's fine, so don't feel bad about it. And to quote a person that spoke before, I knew that I didn't know. I knew that I had to ask questions, which is Siege running the infrastructure team in NPM after being a normal app dev, which is great. It's really great, and it worked. So remember the sloth. Find your own pace. I know there are so many great things to learn, and many articles kind of make it seem like it's a breeze to set them up and use them, but those articles are often written after the author spent like countless hours to actually get these things running, just saying Webpack here, for example, and like fiddling with it. So expecting to get the same results just after reading the blog post in a very short time frame is kind of unrealistic. So don't forget to take your time, and also don't forget to take naps. So learning takes time. Well, Philip Roberts, who I spotted somewhere in the audience, gave an excellent talk about learning, I think last year, if I'm right, that I definitely recommend you to check out. And the only thing I'd like to add is when people are already good at one skill and they try to pick up a new skill, they kind of compare themselves, like they compare their progress with the skill they already mastered and feel like discouraged, which is, don't do that. So don't be disappointed if your progress is a bit slower than you expected. Don't compare yourself to others. Everyone has their own unique way, and not everyone is Substack or want to be like him. But it doesn't mean that you're not a valuable member of the community. Compare yourself to all the versions of you. You probably learned a bunch in the meantime, and that's great. Take some pride in that. And be one of those loud voices. If I can stand on this stage with my mean German accent and saying the F word way too much, we basically need more people on stage. We don't want to see the same bearded faces all the time. One of the greatest things that ScotlandJS did was a diversity call for papers workshop. And I hosted one in Berlin together with Lena Reinhardt and Michel Guido, and it's actually great to see one speaker actually made it from that workshop on stage today. That was really fucking excellent. Said it again. But it was excellent, sorry. And one last thing is there's one person who is so much better than me in both speaking and also observing, and it turns out that he spoke about a very similar topic at CSS Conf Nording just this Wednesday. It's Surviving in a High-Speed Environment by my dear friend Lena Reinhardt. And I guess the video is going to be out soon, so go check that out. I've yet to see a bad talk by her. She's excellent. So while preparing for this talk, I had so many thoughts, and my note list is so long still, and it's not everything in here. I think the key point is code doesn't matter. Humans do. Thank you.